we're waiting, how many people here have done a pitch before? Okay, great. Good. And we're here to figure this out together, which is good. Sorry, are you introducing this slide? Is this about?
So I believe all of you have already with your teammates, and so.
Oh, this is for the groups that you already.
Yeah.
Great. Okay.
Yeah.
So these were, as I understand, randomly assigned.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Great. And just so I have a sense of who I'm talking to, are you guys all part of the Women's Foundation, or how are you? I guess just hear from one or two people. Why are you here? How did you hear about this event? Sorry?
We are entrepreneurs. I'm about myself. Entrepreneur.
Oh, you're an entrepreneur. Great. Are you part of the CoCoon community already?
Yes.
Okay, great. Even better. So, from what I understand, this is to help prepare all of you who have ideas. Perhaps you're in the beginning stages of creating a startup. Perhaps you're pitching next week to prepare to pitch your ideas to other people. So, this is okay, great. So today I'm running a very short 5-minute explanation of what a pitch is. And then we're going to move to, as Erica mentioned, the game that we've designed to help you get a hands-on experience of creating a pitch. And you don't have to worry about pitching your own business. That's not part of the game. So first of all, I'd like to introduce myself very briefly. So my name is Renee Boey, and I have 3 passions. I love literature and writing, I love young people, and I love education and learning. And for many years, I was a teacher, an IB teacher. I taught at different schools in Hong Kong. And I also did some creative writing and various sorts of writing. And last year, I came back from San Francisco after doing a MFA in creative writing and decided that I wanted to do something in education that was outside of the traditional channels of learning. And part of the reason is because I've interacted with a lot of young people, I've been exposed to new ways of learning, and I felt very inspired by what I'd seen in the Silicon Valley, sort of learning that goes beyond school. And I also noticed that while I was teaching at school, there's like a lot of stress nowadays surrounding tests, surrounding admissions, and preparing for colleges and so on. And I felt that the way people were approaching it wasn't really helping things, and most importantly, it was not very productive for the kids. And I don't think it actually prepares them for the life they'll lead after school. So I wanted to do something about that. So like Shay said, you identify a problem that resonates with you. And the solution I came up with is called Baker and Bloom. And it was founded last year at CoCoon. And we've been open for a year now and teaching. They're kids who are kindergarten, like 40-year-olds, all the way up to grade 12 and beyond. And we taught over 250 students since last summer, which is pretty great. But you know, what matters to us is each child that we actually get to work with. So as you probably know, there are tons of tutoring centers, education centers in Hong Kong. So how are we different, and what do we offer that really is different? So essentially, the biggest difference, I would say, is in addition to helping kids achieve academic success, what we look at is long-term success and long-term happiness. One thing that you probably all realize at this stage in your life is that, to be happy, you need a lot more than achievement and success and work in order to find meaning, and you need relationships to be happy, and you need the support of people around you. You need to have careers that you find, ways in which you feel you're leading a meaningful life. And to do that well, we feel that we need to, so what we're focused on is to help people prepare for this sort of career and lifelong success. And so the programs that we offer range from things like social entrepreneurship, global leader, and super learner, in addition to the regular sort of more traditional school type of learning, which we still approach in a different way. Okay, but enough about this. There's a reason I spent some time talking about that. So back to the topic of the day, what is a pitch? I don't know what impressions you have of this, but one definition that I've heard from Guy Kawasaki, I don't know if you guys know him, but he is he's an investor, venture capitalist, entrepreneur. He helped evangelize Apple, and he has a lot of videos you can watch online, in one of which he defined a pitch as the process of seeking agreement And I really like that perspective on the pitch, because a lot of times you hear about the 30-minute elevator pitch, or you pitch to investors. So there's this idea that it's about selling yourself, it's like self-promotional, it's also very much about seeking money, investments, right? Sponsorships of some type. But I think it's a much more productive perspective to think about a pitch as a process of seeking agreement, whatever that means to you. And that depends a lot on your purpose of the pitch, as well as whom you're talking to. And for today, who are you talking to? So who is your audience? As Erica mentioned, the judges for tonight, Ilaria and Christine, I don't know if you already read a bit about their background, but I think maybe I should tell you a little bit. Christine is also in education, a woman entrepreneur, also very involved in philanthropy and a lot of NGOs. She focuses a lot on character education and starts from a very young age. So she has experience as an entrepreneur and a woman leader, and she works with young people. Ilaria does various things, but is in this capacity, I would say, an investor, and also has experience with philanthropy. So you sort of have an idea of their interest, and Ilaria was a former director at Goldman Sachs as well. So to give you a bit of context, these are the two people who will be evaluating you. And the criteria sheet that you will be evaluated on is on your desk. I think we have 2 criteria sheets, right? Somewhere? Oh, they're being handed. It doesn't matter. We can go through that later. But it is important to think about that. Like, why are you pitching? Who are you pitching to? Okay, so structure. Because I'm sure many of you here have made formal presentations. You probably can do it way better than I can. But a pitch is not a presentation. And a lot of times here, I've been to many of CoCoon's pitch events, as well as watched many other pitch events outside of CoCoon. And one thing that you realize is sometimes very accomplished people give pretty terrible pitches. And part of the reason is they're used to talking for like an hour. And they have a captive audience, maybe they're CEOs of their companies, and they're used to everybody sort of like going, oh, nodding to whatever they say. But a pitch is something that is much shorter. And that makes a big difference. It's like brevity is the soul of a pitch as well as wit. So first of all, I'm just going to give you a simple formula to deliver a pitch. You can vary it and do it different ways, but these are the questions that you should answer. First question is, who are you? And like what Shay said, building your team is very important. And actually, what Shay covered in a very appealing and also like easy to understand way is sort of how to build your startup and make the good impression. And as she said, the building of the startup is really the foundation of making that impression. But that is internal, right? So when you communicate to others, what you focus on is something that may be more condensed and what you want to highlight. So it might be the different strengths of your team, your relevant background, and it also might be sort of part of your company's identity and core culture. So being able to convey that briefly is what you want to do in the first part of answering who you are. The second thing is to figure out who do you help, right? So early on, I sort of explained a little about my passion. That's sort of who I feel like I am and what I identify with. And then I explained that I like working with young people, K3 through 12. And so for you guys, I mean, what is your market? That's one way to look at it, sort of a more business way, your target, or maybe more advertising way, your target audience. But another way to think about it is whose problem are you trying to solve? And that is also important in the ask, when later on you make an ask in a pitch, because you're also seeking collaborators, right? Like I said, a pitch is about seeking agreement. So sometimes it's not about seeking funding, but seeking somebody, maybe a co-founder, maybe just people who will be your evangelists. And so understanding who you're trying to help helps your message as well. And obviously it should help the design of your solution. If you think about, have any of you heard about design thinking or human-centered design? Maybe you have. And essentially that approach is to begin with empathy and understanding of your customer, right? So who are you trying to help, and doing the research to know them well. And then finally, how do you help them? So that is where, what is the value you're offering? What is the service you're offering? And you also want to, after you figure out the basics, differentiate yourself. How are you different from the other people who are doing the same thing, helping the same people, solving the same problem? How do you help them in a way that is different? And highlighting that in a succinct way. Now, if you cover all these three things, as I did in my little introduction, you've given the first half of a pitch. But I wasn't pitching to you, and so I didn't do what you would do in a pitch, which is to make the ask. And let me skip this for now and go back. So if you don't ask, the answer is always no, right? So you got to be clear about the context, and in this specific conversation, what is it that you want at the end of the conversation? And sometimes that helps you whittle down your message. Because maybe all you want is the chance for a longer conversation. And maybe then you just sort of say enough to intrigue them so that you have that chance. And maybe providing too much information actually has the reverse effect, right? But I'll just go back to give you a couple of examples. One-liners, you want the ideas to be short. So this is sort of maybe a more Silicon Valley, Hollywood type of thing, but one-liners, Jaws on a spaceship, that's how they pitched Alien. Die Hard on a bus, Speed. Romeo and Juliet in 1984, like Orwell's novel, Equals, a new film that's coming out. Flickr for video. Now, these are just examples of imaginary startups. Flickr for video, Instagram for teachers, Tinder for moms and nannies, Kickstarter of the Arab world. So you can kind of get a sense of how you're using an existing successful company or something usually that people are very familiar with and so easily can grasp a lot. That's the power of a metaphor. And then I'll just summarize some of the great comments given by the judges so we can all leave this workshop with some clear takeaways. And I'll just use a simple, like mnemonic, 3 C's. So the first is connection, the second is conviction, and the third is clarity. So in terms of connection, I think Christine just mentioned this, forming a connection using props and visuals. Larry mentioned eye contact, building a trust, looking at the judges or whoever you're really appealing to when you say your key words, your taglines, and using a variety way of doing this. In terms of having a connection with a partner, having good flow and dialogue that the audience can participate in too. And then secondly, with conviction, being passionate about your product, showing joy in creating it and enthusiasm in conveying that its use. Be careful of upspeak, which I just did. But basically, that's basically like ending with, I guess, like a lower tone, and I like that kind of downward gesture suggestion. But I think partly conviction, she mentioned taking note of the competitive landscape and showing ways in which you can differentiate yourself and really stand out. And then lastly, in terms of clarity, although I think in the designing of the startup, you're pretty clear about who you are and who you're trying to help, sometimes there's so many ideas and there's so much to share, it's hard for the audience to really get the gist of it. So be very clear and maybe simplify sometimes who you are, so the strengths of your team, which some of you guys did particularly well on, who is going to help, but also who's going to pay. I think sometimes that's like who the customer is may not necessarily be the audience, like with the kids, with the nonprofits, there's sometimes a differentiation, I think, between the user and the customer. So making that clear as well, and being very concrete about what you're asking.